Welcome back, class, to the True and Accurate History of the Iroquois League, Part 5. When we left off, the Iroquois were in the midst of a war against the Siamese. Hiawatha had been captured by the Britons, and Tadadaho had taken over by popular vote. R.E.D continued to serve as his advisor. Ragusa had also declared war on the Iroquois, and in retaliation, or not retaliation, but more response, Tadadaho sent soldiers and boats to the city-state in order to conquer it. The threat could no longer be ignored at their back. Forces continued to move down through Osininka to Buffalo Creek, which seemed to be the focal point of the Siamese attacks. The massive empire of the Siam seemed to be able to field an endless army of soldiers, one that rivaled and then overpassed that of the Iroquois, and even of the British, and even of the Aztec, the other most warlike nation nearby. It was a violent time. The people, however, remained hopeful. They had had their elections, they had had their say heard, their voices had taken on a new pitch in the wake of the election and the ouster of Hiawatha. However, it seemed clear that things were not changing as had been promised. War continued. Other nations of the world continued to attempt to conquer and destroy the Iroquois people. Their scattered settlements were under siege constantly. New plans were beginning to see the light of day, of ways to counter these issues, but it seemed like it would be a long time before any of those came to fruition, due to the massive drain on the coffers that was caused by the war. It seemed like an endless, pointless back and forth of death with the Siamese. They would kill one or two Iroquois soldiers. The Iroquois would kill one or two Siamese brigades, and it would simply go back and forth, back and forth. No cities were conquered, no peace could be reached. The mad Emperor Ramakeng refused to entertain the diplomats of the Iroquois, refused to consider or discuss peace, and the British simply waited. The Aztecs saw this as a sign of weakness, or a sign of opportunity to take revenge against the Iroquois for bloodying their nose back in the older war, for making them submit. They were furious. I've left in a couple of these freezes so that you can see why these episodes are taking so long to produce. Now look how long this is staying frozen. Now remember that this video has been sped up 350%. This is the problem, this is why it's taking so long and why there's so many delays in this season. I apologize, I'm trying to work on the problem. Buffalo Creek remained heavily defended, both by land and by sea. The city of Kamphaeng Phet seemed to be just out of reach, and Tadadaho drew up multiple plans to invade the city, but none of those plans ever seemed to work out. The Siamese simply had too many soldiers in reserve. You can see here Ragusa coming under heavy siege by the triremes, and of course the Mohawk warriors who now formed the backbone of the Iroquois army. It seemed that sooner or later something had to give, somewhere. Currency was developed at this time, an innovation of Tadadaho's, which allowed the creation of new money and the creation of institutions which would store money for people while taking some of that money for their own use. These institutions were called banks. People did not like them, but it meant that the Iroquois League started making money again instead of losing it hand over fist. This was also the beginning of a golden age for the Empire. Thrilled with the outcome of their election, and content with the war continuing down at Buffalo Creek far away from their capital cities, the people cheered Tadadaho and Dekanawide, and continued to believe that Hiawatha had been in the wrong. New technologies were being researched every day, but that did not seem to slow the progress of the war. New soldiers were trained week after week to replace the massive tide of losses experienced by the people. I edited that one out so that you only saw a couple seconds of it. The massive tides of death sweeping across the nation. But the Iroquois believed that they had the Siamese on the run, at least around Camfang Fet. Unfortunately for them, they could not have been more wrong. The siege of Ragusa, at least, was going well, but the Siamese had a new trick up their sleeve, which would turn the tide of the war against the Iroquois once again, in a major way. We're about to see it in action. Work here, making sure the cities are properly set up and prepared. And now let's get to the tragic part. Oh, good. The sad music has started. You can see here the Aztec are beginning to move through British territory towards Iroquois lands. And the Siamese have unveiled their secret weapon. Giant goddamn elephants covered in dudes with spears. These elephants were perhaps the most devastating thing that had ever been fielded in any war in the world's history to this point. A simple group of 3 elephants with 3 or 4 men sitting on the back of each with bows and spears was capable of immediately destroying anything it came in contact with. The people of the Iroquois were shocked and horrified. For one thing, they had never seen elephants before. For another, where the hell were the Siamese getting all these elephants? It seemed strange, but they appeared to have some sort of stockpile of elephants hidden away in the south of the continent where the Iroquois had not visited before. Nothing they had at their disposal seemed capable of even remotely countering the elephants. However, in order to save Buffalo Creek and prevent Siamese expansion, Tadadaho and his lieutenants, including Cao Cao here, decided that they would have to launch a series of suicide attacks against the elephant in order to save the Iroquois League in its entirety. This was a move of desperation, but they simply did not have the power or the means to counterattack against these giant beasts and their prickly passengers. You can see the British trying to come up through the south as well here, clearly allied with the Siamese in this war. The Aztec also seemed to be allied with the British, or at least to have treaties which allowed them free passage through their borders. You see here the first brave group of Mohawk warriors preparing their assault. First the cavalry came in, hoping that their speed and maneuverability would give them an edge over the lumbering elephants. It did not. And the Mohawk warriors struck, hoping that they would be able to make a dent with their advanced weapons. They could not. Their group of Mohawk warriors also tried and died in the attempt. See here the naval power trying to fight off the British. More Iroquois warriors coming in, hoping to finish off that deadly elephant. But would it be enough? History tells us no. No, it would not. For even while the Iroquois were throwing all of their men and women at this problem head on, the Siamese were simply producing more. This was a war that would not end cleanly or soon. This final group finally managed to wear down one of the elephants. The unit was defeated. The Iroquois League soldiers survived just barely. Let's turn our attention back to the attack on Ragusa. We could have taken it this turn, however, it was decided by Tadadaho to conserve strength and wait until the soldiers were prepared, and wait until the triremes could prepare another volley against the city. This turned out to be a good decision, one of the few Tadadaho made during his tenure. Here we see Ragusa under assault. These warriors are a little too wounded, but these swiftly swoop in, kick down the walls, and take Ragusa for their own in the name of the Iroquois League. The British are driven away. With the elephant defeated, it seems that things are finally going to get better. Also, as a side note, this was very annoying. I was maybe 1 or 2 turns from the medieval era, and I wanted to save this social policy upgrade, but the game doesn't let you. So I had to take one, even though I didn't want this. So it seemed with the defeat of the Naruemon's elephant unit, the war would return to going in the favor of the Iroquois League. People once again grew hopeful. It seemed like things were looking up. Everything was perfect. Aside from that whole endless war with the Siamese, of course. Not to mention ongoing hostilities with the British. Poor diplomatic relations with the Aztec, who had just founded a settlement on this side of Hudson's Bay. And tense relations with the Americans, who were slowly building their forces. But other than that, things seemed to be going pretty well. I mean, hey, the elephant was dead, and surely the Siamese would run out of soldiers soon. Oh, I guess not. A plan for consolidating Iroquois territory finally went into motion. By founding new cities in close proximity to each other, therefore solidifying Iroquois League control over those lands. Unfortunately, this didn't do anything to help with the giant frickin' elephants who continued to assault the Iroquois stronghold of Buffalo Creek. Right now, you can see they are teaming up with British forces. And it seems as if the Siamese have an endless supply of these elephants. Every time they're destroyed, it's as if 3 more appear. It's a hydra, except with tusks, and spears attached to its back. Nevertheless, Buffalo Creek held strong, and the Iroquois League soldiers grew more experienced in dealing with the elephants, and soon were able to take them down without quite so many casualties as they had suffered in the first battle. The trick was to lure them onto more favorable terrain, where the elephants would have difficulty maneuvering, as we can see here, and surrounding them and defeating them as swiftly as possible. It was a costly way to fight, but it was the only way that seemed to be successful at the moment. At this time, Tadadaho also began putting into motion one of his new plans to conquer Kamptang-Phet. Without having to worry about the other enemies of the world with whom they still had valid treaties, the Iroquois could focus on trying to wear down the Siamese and force a surrender, as they had done with so many enemies before. You see Brantford being founded, linking together the cities of the Iroquois League, and the Aztec trying to move their own settlers deeper into Iroquois territory. A new city is being founded there, north of Osininka as well. Now, for the first time, a large force of Mohawk warriors was near Kamptang-Phet, as well as ranged attackers and a general. It seemed the ideal time to strike. You just see some archers harrying the spearmen. The only elephant currently in play was over at Atlanta, where it would have, no doubt, a difficult time sieging the city, so long as the Americans didn't get involved in the fight, or, say, the Aztec. But that's crazy. They wouldn't want to get into another war with the Iroquois after the sound thrashing they received last time, right? Of course not. Iroquois acquitting themselves quite well, at least until another elephant shows up outside Campang Fet, and a catapult trailing one of the war elephants towards Atlanta. Things seem bad. However, Tadadaho continues to assure the populace that everything is under control, that the people are... Oh, wait just a minute. The Aztec have declared war against the Iroquois once again in 900 AD. This certainly isn't going well, even though Montreal was founded at the same time, and the Iroquois enter a new level of technology. Unfortunately, it's not quite enough to fight a four-front war. Did I say 4 fronts? I meant 3 fronts. For now. When we return, the 4th front. Till next time, all the best.